Hello everyone, my name is Jennifer and welcome to Best Kept Plans. Today's video is one I am very excited to be filming. We are going to be talking all about my favorite books that I read in 2025. If you're interested in seeing that, please stick around. As I said in my introduction, today's video is going to be a reading recap for 2025, a video all about my favorite books that I read in 2025. Actually just finished filming my December 2025 reading recap, so this felt like the perfect time to film this video. I'm also filming this on January 1st, so Happy New Year. Welcome to 2026. I want to start out with talking about some stats for the year 2025. In 2025, I read 133 books. I read a total of 52,454 pages. My average rating was a 3.7 stars. I had 8 5-star reads throughout the year. The most books that I read in a single month was 15, and I read 15 books in January, February, and May 2025. The least amount of books that I read in a month was 6, and I read 6 books in July 2025. I was in the midst of a major book slump. I did have several reading challenges that I completed throughout the year. I had a classics challenge. I wanted to read 6 classics and I did do so. I also had a literary fiction challenge where I wanted to read 1 literary fiction book every month. And I'm going to say that I completed that challenge because I did at least attempt 1 literary fiction book every month. Unfortunately, in the month of June, I attempted 2 literary fiction books and I DNF'd both of them. That was the only month in the year that I couldn't actually physically write down a book I completed. And then, of course, I have my A to Z challenge. I don't pick books specifically to fulfill that challenge. I just see how many I can get to. And I did end up with 6 letters that I couldn't fill in 2025. And then my last reading challenge was 25 books in 2025. And I'm going to say that I completed that challenge as well. The caveat to that is there was 1 book, The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna, which was on that challenge. I started it, I got about 55% of the way through it, and then I ended up DNFing it. All of the other books on my 25 books in 2025 reading challenge, I did complete. Now, before we talk about my 5-star reads, my favorite books of 2025, I did have a couple of, I guess, honorable mentions I wanted to bring up. And the first is a series that I started in 2025 that I will be continuing with in 2026. And that is the Wayward Children series by Seanan McGuire. I have absolutely enjoyed every single one of the books that I have read in this series so far. I think this series is so much fun. It's so interesting. I love that our main characters are children. I love the adventures that they go on. I love the dynamics between our characters. Also, the different worlds that we get to explore as we're reading these books. I just think that they're so unique, so interesting. If you haven't explored this series yet, I highly recommend doing so. And then I also quickly wanted to talk about Olive Blake. I have read 3 of Olive Blake's books this year. I've read several of her other books in the last few years. I have thoroughly enjoyed every book that I have read by her. Her writing, I don't know what it is, but I just vibe with her writing so much, and I feel like her writing is just so good, and I'm always so excited to get more from her. I feel like in 2025 she kind of cemented herself as my favorite current author, and I love that. Now we are going to dive into my 8 5-star reads of 2025. The first several that we're going to talk about are in no particular order, but I do have a top 3 of the year and we will chat about those in top 3 order. The first one that I want to talk about is the only one that I don't have physically, and that is A Witch's Guide to Magical Innkeeping by Sangu Mandana. This is actually my most recent 5-star read. I read this in the month of November. This one snuck up on me. I was not anticipating this being a 5-star read. This is very much a cozy story. It does have a romantic subplot, which I think is done so, so well. I love our main character. I love all of our side characters. I think that the topics that Mandana brings up in this story are so timely and needed. I think she talks about them so well, even though they're not the primary focus of the story. And I just feel like if you are looking for adorable, sweet, romantic, cozy vibes, this is the read for you. Absolutely. The next 5-star read that we're going to talk about is Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I read this in April 2025 and I absolutely fell in love with it. I know that this is a pretty polarizing book for people. A lot of people really do not like this. I was pleasantly surprised with this. I thought that the writing was really strong. I thought that both aspects of this story were done very well, and I feel like it had a very satisfying ending, and 5 out of 5 stars. I love this book. I think it's so, so good. The next 5-star read we're going to talk about is one that I read in July 2025 when I was in the middle of a huge book slump. So the fact that I rated this 5 stars really is a testament to how incredible this book is, and that is The Winners by Fredrik Backman. This is the third and final book in the Beartown series. This book, to me, is just a wonderfully executed ending to this series. I think that it ties things up in a really beautiful way. It is a devastating book, but if it was going to be that way, it needed to be executed, handled, dealt with perfectly, and Bachman achieved that. It is so, so good. The whole series overall is so, so good. And I love this, and I highly recommend this series if you haven't read it. Next, we're going to talk about the first book that I read in 2025. This was my first read in January, and it was a 5 out of 5-star read, and that is Beg, Borrow, or Steal by Sarah Adams. This is the third book in the When in Rome series, and I love this book. I think it's so, so good. The characters, our two main characters, I feel like I relate to our female main character a lot. I loved her dynamic with our male main character. Their banter throughout this is so, so good. Sarah Adams does an incredible job with that. I loved everything about this. I highly recommend this book as a standalone, but also I think the When in Rome series overall is so great, and definitely recommend reading that series. Now, the last 5-star read that we're going to talk about before diving into my top 3 is James by Percival Everett. I read this in March 2025 and could not get enough of it. I did listen to this on audio as well as read along physically, and I think that was a really great decision. I think the audiobook for this is fantastic and really just helps to bring you into the story and immerse you in the story. I found the writing in here to be exceptional. It's just so, so good. And I know that so many people have read this and love this. I know that this is a critically acclaimed book, and it deserves all of that attention and all of that praise because it really is that good. In my number 3 spot is The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence. This is the first book in a trilogy. This book I read in January 2025, and it ended up being my favorite book that I read that month. I can't give too much away about this. I think that you should go into this book blind. But it is a book about books. It's also a book about perception. It's a book about what is enemy versus what is friend. It's about the fact that we all have so much more in common with each other than we really realize. And it's a really fantastic introduction to a series. My second favorite book of 2025 is The Book Thief by Markus Zusak. This is a historical fiction revolving around World War II. Our main character is a child, and my favorite thing about this book is that our narrator is death. This main character is someone that the reader can't help to be incredibly invested in, and that really is because of how good the writing is. And I loved this, and I highly recommend this. And my number 1 favorite book that I read in 2025 is Babel by R.F. Kuang. When I read this book in September 2025, I kind of knew that it was going to be my favorite book of the year. The fact that this book exists is genuinely like an accomplishment. It's a feat. I hope that Kwong is so, so proud of this accomplishment because this book is written so incredibly well. It is so involved, so detailed, and every detail you can tell as you're taking it in has been painstakingly researched and has been written in a way that you can feel secure in it and invested in it. This story is incredibly important for a number of different reasons. It handles some interesting but also challenging subject matter in a remarkable way. And I think it's one of the best things that I'm ever going to read, genuinely. I did listen to this on audio, and having that immersive reading experience I found was incredibly fulfilling and allowed me to process this story in a really, really great way that I think made me appreciate it even more. I just cannot say enough good things about this. And if you have not read this, I urge you to do so. It is so worth the investment. And that is it for my 5-star reads of 2025, my favorite books of the year, my top 3 of the year. And before I leave you all, I did quickly just want to touch upon things that I'm excited for when it comes to reading in 2026. I have a few of them. I made a little bit of a list. The first of which is the sequel to Metal Slinger, which is Light Wielder. I believe this is coming out in June or July. I really enjoyed Metal Slinger way more than I thought I was going to, and I'm very much looking forward to the follow-up to that book, especially considering the big twist we get in the last few chapters of Metal Slinger. Next is that I want to be reading more CoComelons. I read Cleopatra and Frankenstein this year. I absolutely loved it. I do have Blue Sisters on my shelves, and I need to get to that book in 2026. I felt like the writing in Cleopatra and Frankenstein was so great that I want more of that writing in my life. And I'm also hoping that we have more releases from CoComelons soon. Next is that I'm really, really excited, like probably the most excited for the sequel to The Irresistible Urge to Fall for Your Enemy. The title of the sequel is The Exquisite Torment of Loving Your Enemy. I had to read that on my cheat sheet. The first book was so fun. It's an enemies to lovers story. I loved our characters. Their dynamic is great. I wasn't expecting the book to be as funny as it was, and so I'm really, really hoping that that humor makes its way into book 2 as well. I cannot remember when book 2 is coming out, but I'm beyond excited for it. And then the last 2 on my excited for 2026 list are that I'm excited for more Olivia Blake. I know that she has a couple of releases coming out in 2026, and I cannot wait for both of them. I absolutely love her, and I always want to read more from her. And then lastly, more fantasy. I feel like I've gotten back into fantasy in the last few years, but this year was the year that I really felt like fantasy became my favorite genre to read. I've loved so many of the fantasies that I've read. There's so many more on my shelves and out there in general that I want to read. There's so many that are coming up in 2026 that I'm incredibly excited for, and I want to read even more fantasy in 2026. That's definitely a goal of mine. And that is going to be it for my 2025 reading recap. I hope that you all enjoyed hearing about my favorite books that I read in 2025. If you have read any of the books that I've talked about, please do not hesitate to put some spoiler-free thoughts down below. And as always, everyone, please be safe. Bye-bye.